where you scream, don't watch that, watch this, and I'll dive down through this hairy flesh.
Hi, and welcome to Watch This. I'm CJ Johnson, joined by Adam Boyes, and we are brought to you partially by the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, AFTRS. They have long and short courses. Adam and I are both graduates of the school. We both enjoyed it very, very much and recommend you check it out. Go look up what courses might be fine for you. Two filmmakers who, I'm not sure if they went to film school or not, but are certainly inspirational for all filmmakers around the world, are the Coen brothers. Recently, Netflix gave them what seems to me like must have been an enormous amount of money to make a feature film. It's about 2 hours and 12 minutes long. It's called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and it's a portmanteau film, or an anthology film, of 6 different stories, all told one after the other, all adding up to this sort of Western fantasia. And they're all linked by the fact that they take place in the wild old American West.
I'm Buster Scruggs.
You're shooting ironwork.
Appears to do, yes.
Adam, what'd you think of The Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Mate, I loved it.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I loved it.
I think this has to be one of the best films of 2018.
Oh my
Easily.
Gosh, I've discovered in my journey as a filmmaker and things that I wasn't a huge Coen brothers fan, but as I'm maturing in my taste or getting older, or maybe even how they're growing as artists too, man, I'm loving the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
They are some of the best filmmakers that we've ever had.
Yeah, well, I think right off the bat, like in this film with this story, which is the first story, which is the one called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, right off the bat, in the first few minutes, they just show you their total mastery of cinematic storytelling. Everything about this entire film is, just exquisite. Like the cinematography is exquisite, the camera work is exquisite, the costume, the period detail, the sound, he's singing, and then immediately the things that happen with this character straight off the bat are so well done and so precisely done, and the laughs are so precisely earned that they just show you that they are top of the game, masters of the medium.
Who else do you know that can get away with that many monologues in a movie?
I know.
And pull it off and not be boring and be really engaged with everything every character has to say.
Yeah, well, Tarantino is the only other one, I thought.
I don't think he could do this many. I don't think he could have a portmanteau of monologues and get away with it.
Yeah. Pretty incredible stuff. So it's composed of 6 stories, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and then there's another one, and the first 2 are both quite short and obviously very comedic. And then as the film moves into its sort of middle section, there are some longer stories and the tone gets darker and, reaches for greater emotional depths. And then it all kind of wraps up in a sort of more intriguing, quirkier way that I think has something kind of profound to say.
So I'm the distractor with a little story. People can't get enough of them. Because, well, they connect the stories to themselves, I suppose. And we all love hearing about ourselves. So long as the people in the stories are us, but not us.
Yeah.
Did you have a particular favourite, or?
While I was watching it, I thought...
By the way, I should say, spoiler alert, we will probably spoil some plot details of some of these stories, so if you want to go away, watch the film, come back to us. It's on Netflix.
Please do. As I was watching it, I thought, this is the best. And then, and then this is the best. And then this. The one that got me, I think, that held me the most initially was the Meal Ticket, was the one about the amputee,
the performer,
orating from town to town. That I was just their relationship was so incredible. I couldn't work out what it was, how they were connected, how they felt about each other, until the end, and you realise exactly how he feels about him. Yeah. And
the storytelling in that one is so amazing because there's very little dialogue outside of the performances of that
classic
amputee
text
actor.
for the Bible. And
the storytelling is kind of told through weather. and, you know, the amount of people at the show. So the first show he gives, there's a lot of people, it's a nice night, and everyone's enjoying it. And you're like, wow, he's so good at this, and they're loving it, and it's all great. And then it gets colder and colder, and there are less and less people, and they start to like walk out on him. And, you know, it's so cleverly told.
My gosh. And you see the end arriving, and you see it arriving even in that final scene. You know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Yet you're still
Yeah.
wanting to know. Yeah.
And if that one has a particular like summation, a particular kind of moral to its story, that moral filters out through all the others, and that is life was cheap in the Old West. You know what I mean? Because characters in this film die all the time.
The whole thing
out
is
of
tragic.
nowhere.
Every story is tragic.
Every story is tragic.
Yeah, every story ends with death. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I watched the first one, I thought, this is like a perfect short film. Like, if you had to die and go and just have one short film to ever have, I mean, it's impeccable. But as you say, they're all good. The longest one, the one with Zoe Kazan as a woman who works with a wagon train, that was beautiful and so
beautiful.
exquisite.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And that could even have been expanded into a feature film, I think. There was such depth of characterization there.
Totally, but the tone of this whole thing is not quite satire, but a little bit satire. So characters are just an archetype almost, but quite a well-developed and rich and unique archetype. But they still just sit at that surface level. So he is the wagon train protector. He is a gallant knight of sorts, and she is a damsel, and the other guy's the old wise veteran. Like they're all playing those parts. So expanding it further, I don't know. I think it just sits so nicely exactly as that story is.
This'll tell to tale.
Do you have anything to say before sentence is carried out?
Sentence? What's my sentence?
All the characters behave in ways that you don't expect them to. That's what I love about them too. They're not just trying to deliver you the same scene that you've seen before. They're not just showing you, I loved watching this when I was a kid, therefore you're just going to see my version of that. No, they're like, no, this character does this in this situation because they've really thought it through.
It's true. So you're constantly surprised, and yet with the surprise comes logic. You know, so everything that moves on, you're always going like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, but it always makes sense.
Always makes sense. They've set it up, they've given you the tools to expect it,
Yeah, but I want to talk about the last one.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Because I think along the way, it's a generous film, you know, it's over 2 hours. So along the way, I was trying to figure out what this meant to the Coens beyond just being this incredibly entertaining set of stories. And I thought, you know, obviously there's the, you know, life is cheap thing, that violence can come out of anywhere in the Old West. I thought it was deconstructing the mythology of the Old West to some degree with the whole gunslinging thing and the whole idea that, you know, shootouts happen all the time, that maybe there was too much violence in it as a sort of commentary on the fact that what we get in our stories of the Old West is violence. But the more I went along, I thought what they're really talking about is language. As you say, there's so many monologues in this film, and the dialogue is so exquisite, and the dialogue is so respectful, and everyone talks so beautifully and eloquently. I thought they were really talking about language, and the final film is just language. The final story was only language.
People interpret the world around them very differently from their experiences and their influences and culture too, because you've got the Frenchman, the Irishman, the Englishman, the American, the trapper.
Yeah, set up like a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
And even the trapper, who's the coarsest character, like in the film, talks so beautifully and so eloquently.
Has a beautiful view on life and love and...
About this strange relationship he had with a native woman.
Yeah.
Who then one day after many years up and left him.
Yeah, but also he defends the honour of the woman next to him, even though she calls him a savage and judges him. There's this beautiful switching of ideas as everyone's trying to just explain that dichotomy. There's two types of people in the world.
Yeah. And so here is a true spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, don't listen. This is a true spoiler alert. In the final moments of the film, when the two men sitting next to each other tell their story, and they tell it so eloquently, and they also tell it with not just a little hint of a potential gay relationship between those two men, I thought.
Yeah.
And they reveal that they're bounty hunters, and that up on top of them there's a body. And as they take it in, to me that was this monumental moment of the Coens fusing language and violence without showing any violence. The final story has no violence, and yet everyone in the carriage is utterly spooked.
Oh, they are terrified. There's the threat of violence is incredible. But my feeling on the end, because I rewatched the final moment
Yeah.
when the carriage drives away.
Yeah.
I rewatched it because that is quite an ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, even the line they give, each chapter has that little bit of a little lead-in line because it's being told through this book, which
Yeah.
I want to read because at the end of every chapter, the
Yeah.
writing is incredible as
I
well.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were desperate to read it all.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking to myself, like, how much of this are they wanting us to get, by giving us the amount of time
I
they
think
give
they're
us?
happy if you pause it, and I think
yeah.
they're happy if you pause and read the last chapter. But that moment, the coachman wouldn't stop even if you told him to.
Yeah.
I think that is supernatural. I think it nods toward that being actually, because they say we are reapers of souls and then we're bounty hunters, and it's reduced. But when the Frenchman has that look at the end, and the way that the carriage rides off is this kind of spiritual, like the ferryman bringing people to the afterlife. I think they all died. They're all dead. And they're all just being ferried together. Do you not get that vibe?
I didn't at all.
Well, what was your
no.
interpretation of the Frenchman and the way he looks and then smiles and puts his hat on and walks inside? What is he thinking in that moment to you?
Oh, see, I had a totally different. My interpretation was he's terrified because these two guys who seemed so friendly and charming were actually the two violent ones of the bunch. And he was terrified because his entire belief system, his entire interpretative system had been shaken.
Right.
Because he'd pegged everyone in the carriage and he hadn't pegged them properly. And that had creeped him out. The fact that he thought, oh, they're the safe ones. They're the ones I could take. They're the ones not to worry about. And they were. And that's what creeped him out.
Really interesting too. Another thought I
And
did
also
have,
the fact that he didn't understand their manner. Because I think maybe they were two homosexual men.
Yeah.
And he didn't get that. So he just was... He was unnerved by them.
I also thought that potentially, because there's an idea that one of those three are guilty of something. There's
that's a
bounty
possibility
hunters,
too.
and maybe he was guilty of something in the
Yeah.
end. But there wasn't enough of a clue in the script for that for me. But there is a spiritual thing. The Zoe Kazan one does talk about the maker and the God and creator. So there is a link. So that's why I wasn't so...
I got to have to watch it again.
Yeah,
and we can, because it's on Netflix.
Things have a way of escalating out here in the West.
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings.
That man is a wonder. I will just have to see him. Crazy business.
It was just brilliant, wasn't
It
it?
was incredible.
Obviously, from Adam Boyes and myself, CJ Johnson, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a huge watch this. It's just great.
Huge.
You've been watching Watch This. Take care.
First time.